Well, hey, folks, as promised, I've got the visionary behind the Revolution Wealth Opportunity Zone Fund. And I'm sure some of you are a little bit confused about that. So just sit back and relax. We're going to let you know everything you've ever wanted to know about opportunity zones, but were afraid to ask. But let me introduce this visionary to you. His name is Dr. Oliver Jones. Dr. Jones, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I want you to help this audience understand a little bit about how this Opportunity Zone program came about and how it can be beneficial to those that are looking for investments or looking to make investments in assets that are going to return a yield to them. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to my global audience. Walter Cotton back at you with another installment of the Ability to Go Direct report. My guest today is the visionary, Dr. Oliver Jones, and I'm not going to spend time hyping this dude up. The interview does everything that's needed in that area. I started this interview out asking this first generation immigrant, what was the motivating factor that caused him to create this economic utility that is going to change the balance of power for people who wear my social uniform domestically here in these United States? Let's take a listen to his answer.
Sure. Hello, everybody. As Walter as mentioned, I am Dr. Oliver Jones. I wear a few hats, right? But let me give you a little background. Where Revolution Wealth come from? Why Revolution Wealth? I remember in 2019, I was put in this precarious position. I was the senior economics professor at Hampton University, and you're talking about a 400 years event, at a landing that is in proximity to Hampton University. So we had that 400-year anniversary. We also had the 150-year anniversary, and then we had the 100-year anniversary. You say, what's that 100-year anniversary, right? That was also the Marcus Garvey's interaction with Booker T. Washington, a Hamptonian, who essentially wrote the letter and invite Marcus Garvey to come here to the United States. And subsequently, Marcus Garvey, after coming, noticed that the economic opportunity. Of course, you're talking about in 1919, 1917 to 1919 timeframe. And look and see, okay, if you put it into context, you're talking Black Wall Street, you're talking all Black Wall Streets that are happening all over the place. And so therefore, we were looking at the aspect of assets that we currently have, right, being used to derive economic growth through trade. And so, of course, you can, if you've never heard the story of Marcus Garvey from the perspective of introducing trade among folks that are not only different, live in different areas in economic hub zones, essentially in the United States, but also across the Caribbean, Africa, all over the place, right? And how to integrate trade and create wealth. So from that perspective, now I was getting called into as an economics professor to talk about the 400-year, looking at the wealth status of the African American experience over the last even the last 150 years, right? And we basically consistently were looking at that 2% rule that we find ourselves as a people. We're talking about 14% of the nation, but we're talking less than 2% of the wealth. And it's one thing with economics and numbers. Numbers are sticky. You can't just poof them away. They're facts, right? And so we then a group from Hampton Roads here, which is a Black Chamber of Commerce, came in. They wanted to pull me in as a economics professor. to kind of start to think about the next 150 years. And how can we actually make sure that the next 150 years is not a replay of the last 150 years? When it comes on to the numbers again, wealth part, how do we basically address tangibly over time, addressing that what we call the wealth gap? And so juxtapose that with the work which I've been tracking since 2015, opportunity zones, right? And the opportunity to actually identify locations across the country, which are targeted based on economic, conditions. Again, the numbers that are plotting where the people are, and of course, the data prove that a lot of our minorities are actually inside of these opportunity zones. So here's a plan that needs to get put in place. Here is a known fact of where people are today, and how can we actually design a structure to actually change this? I also look at the history we had over the last 150 years of the HBCU network that is already physically in place. And a lot of these communities are really structured and surrounded around the HBCUs they are. And of course, as the HBCU network is not evenly spread across the United States. So where possible, we look at some of these other minority serving institutions that are in and to fit those gaps and say, can we actually look at the assets that are in place right now, with the people that are in place right now, with the locations that are in place right now, and can we structurally start to make a difference by putting like some long-term structures in place, right? And same thing, beautiful news about the same 2019 is hey, here is this opportunity for wealth to be transferred in those said locations where otherwise, it was so hard to get capital to come in. So now we solve that problem of, okay, the lack of capital coming into the directions in these communities and neighborhoods with, oh my God, the capital is coming in. We have to make sure that we hold on to some of this capital that's coming on, because if not, here comes the avalanche, right? Push us right out of these areas which we find ourselves based on the economic status that we always had. And so if I found it necessary to design a structure in place to actually do that. Because when I started to inquire into the opportunity zone funds, these opportunity zone funds were not being owned at all by minorities. And again, if you don't own, you can't decide on. Yeah, it's not who is the manager for, but who is the owner for that make decision on where wealth go. And where wealth go, that's where the structure of community go and all that basic, that's how that works. So if we are in this moment of time where wealth is getting transferred in and not being controlled, then we are basically going to miss the moment again, a moment that can be consequential for the next 150 years. So it was necessary to create Revolution Wealth Fund and start to collaborate with the HBCU network, minority serving institutions across what we call 48 states, all right? Our goal is to increase HBCU endowment 1.8 billion annually. Why 1.8 billion annually? That because collectively, that's where we are as a HBCU, collectively, right? So, okay, let's just keep doubling that, and exponentially increase that while we're actually doing that in terms of, the endowments, right? And we have the methodology, we have the know-how to do that structure, and all of that stuff. So I build it in a way that we are going to basically impact 120,000 students over 48 states over time, over the next 15 years, and produce while we add it because of our know-how again, space in the in our green space for renewables and so forth. So you might see that the fund is saying like, okay, structurally, we are also basically creating a revenue model for the fund supporting energy to the grid, but we also are tied to real estate and transforming the space also, bringing wealth into that neighborhood. And the part that I love even the most is bringing the business pipeline into there. So it's not just a real estate play, it's not just a proximity and one-time wealth transfer, but creating wealth by owning companies, owning ideas, owning what we call STEM to commercialization, and positioning that inside of these opportunity zones. We are essentially, you create wealth by moving wealth. by revolving wealth, and folks that are all that are inside of it are participating in that wealth creation. So ends revolution wealth.
You know, and I could listen to you all day because the brilliance of your mind intrigues me. I tilt at those windmills when I'm thinking, but as I look out at the audience, I think to myself that we have a few people out there that are not coming from our depth of understanding, and these are people that would take a letter from that Denzel quote that says, "Hey, can you explain that to me like I was a 2-year-old?" So from their point of view or perspective, I want to take the Opportunity Zone program and break it down into its segments. One component of it is the component that allows an individual to make investments in this Revolution Wealth Fund. What kind of individuals have the opportunity to make a contribution or a investment in a fund like the Wealth Revolution or the Revolution Wealth Fund?
Right. Okay, thank you. All right. So first, anyone can make investment into the fund, right? I'm going to tell you some of the benefits and some of the target, however, because of some of the people that are making investment into Revolution Wealth funds, right? Let's say you were fortunate enough to get like a nice little retirement bonus, early retirement, and that happened in 2000, right? And this was a $50,000 that you put into the markets, and all the good stuff happened. So that 50,000 now became 500,000, right? You put 50 in, it's now 500,000. You're not at the age of retirement yet, so those benefits are not even chipped in, although they still impact taxes. But now if you take that 50 from the 5,000, how much you got left, right? You got 450,000 that you actually gained on the capital, the 50,000 over time, right? That gain is called capital gains. That's taxable. Now, what these opportunity zone funds are, they're tax havens. So here's one scenario, and the one which I always kind of position well is like, if that money, that 450 or the 500,000, you move it directly and park it into an opportunity zone, investing into whether it's the real estate or the businesses or so in the opportunity zone, it's not taxable, at least if you keep it there fully for 10 years. And Walter does a great job of explaining the other basis that they're used at a shortened time. But let's say you're not wanting to use it for the next 10 years, right? Not only is that 450,000 not taxable, but the investment that you did into the opportunity zone over 10 years that appreciated in investment, which now basically makes $5 million, and that also you get relief from not taxing, right?
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute, man. I want to make sure I understand what you just said. So what you said is that if I found myself in a position where I had a material capital gains,
yes,
I could take those dollars and I could put them into a opportunity zone fund, therefore deferring any tax impact for that fund, for that gain over the 10-year time period or the useful life of the fund. Yes. And what I think I heard you say is that any appreciation in that investment, I get to take back tax-free.
Correct. That's okay, why. That's the excitement.
Riddle me this. I put 450 in, right? I've got a tax obligation that I've deferred to the future. Yep. And then I have made enough money to cannibalize that tax obligation and then some, and put that in my pocket. That's one of the major benefits or advantages for an individual who has capital gains and does not want to pay the immediate tax on it, or should I say, wants to use other people's money to pay the tax.
Pay taxes, or never to pay taxes if you leave it after 10 years. So if you have that now after 10 years, you get that tax free. So that's the excitement and why it's that new gold rush for folks who who understand this and why you see so much capital is getting into the places where you are, is that
Okay,
people
so I
are,
want to make sure that I'm clear on this point, because my read on the regulation was that the capital gains tax that was required on the original $450,000 is deferred to the 10-year time period, or whenever the fund is sold. So the obligation would be there, but it would be cannibalized by
yes,
the
yes.
investment, or
If,
how
if
does
you
that work?
if you if you take it before 10 years, then you have that deferral benefit. But if you keep it beyond 10 years, then it becomes tax free. So the strategy where most of the folks are coming in with is, I'm just gonna leave it in beyond 10 years and be fine. And so we don't
Wow.
have to deal with any of the in-between parts of it. It's that you're putting into the fund. The caveat is that you can't just park it. You need to basically invest it in something, right? So if it comes into the area, and that's the other part to know, that folks are not basically parking this money that's coming in. They're coming to invest it into your area, in your neighborhood, right? So here's the beautiful part about this. It is a guarantee then that the real estate that is inside the opportunity zone funds will be appreciated, because that funds, all that capital that's coming in must be invested in, right? And they're pouring in, and they're coming from anywhere, right? And,
So these opportunity zone fund tracks, if you will, are these tracks just any discriminate location across the country, or are these targeted towards underserved or historically blighted communities? What kind of communities are available or eligible for these investments?
well, all right, so that is already done, right? I think it was the one of the earlier census what tracks were used to determine what locations, physical border locations there are, what are the opportunity zones are, right? So there are over 8,000 opportunity zones, and the cool thing is, like, we know every single one of it, right? We know it by address. We can pull up and tell you is the investment you're thinking about even in an opportunity zone, right? And where the corners are of where opportunity zone is. So that part of it, we know the database. We're digitizing the process for that too, right? Now,
but I think I'm asking a slightly different question, and I apologize for cutting you off. I just want to make sure that we're clearly explaining to the listener that the census tracts that were designated as opportunity zones were historically underutilized communities.
Yes.
They were investment deserts. They were the kinds of communities that people who wear my social uniform come from. So we're not talking about Beverly Hills or Malibu, right?
No.
But we're talking about communities that actually are in need of this kind of critical capital infusion.
Exactly. They based it on the people that were living across the United States, and so the economic the income status, the economic status, all the programs that are in place that determine where those deserts are, because the people are there, right? Historically, we have a lot of our people, especially we have the story of the migration from South that come to these big manufacturing spaces. And of course, we basically get those jobs into these deserts. And over time, those factories go away. So, we have these clusters of our people around what used to be a great space for, past opportunity, right? And so the story is there economically, where these concentrated spots are there across the country. And so they basically fit into the space. And if you talk to some of the creators or even of the designers of the program, they'll tell you that part of how they've designed this is mapping where the HBCUs were as part of the first go round of that. Then they basically have applications come from the different cities who basically propose areas that should also be qualified into the zone. So there was a twofold phase. One, it starts in DC, and basically a interaction with the different localities. Then ultimately there's a determination of these are the qualified opportunity zones. So that is locked, We know exactly where they are. And the research will tell you that our folks are the probability of who I'm talking today is sitting right now in opportunity zone is very, very high, right? So we
Well,
already there.
ostensibly, what you're saying is that the program was designed to help Black and Brown communities.
Exactly.
And if I understand it correctly, and this is why I'm really excited about the wealth or the Revolution Wealth Fund, is a majority of the opportunity zone funds, if you will, tend to be real estate funds, but the Revolution Wealth Fund is a business fund. It's exclusively designed to invest in business enterprises. Explain to me why you decided to go down that track as opposed to the well-trodden real estate track that most others are going down.
Right, where everybody's going down. All right. So I basically was focused on people. And basically, my background, when I was a teenager, myself, my brother, we got introduced to our dad. He basically set up an engineering firm for me and my brother back in Jamaica from early days, right? And that legacy I brought over to Virginia. And so I was always in the engineering, energy, technology space. And I wasn't seeing a lot of our folks there. I knew from early that Walter, I'm going to tell this slow and clear to everybody. If you're talking about wealth and generational wealth, if you're not talking about being an entrepreneur that owns and carry that wealth over to generation, you're not talking about generational wealth. Somebody is blowing smoke, right? The pathway to own wealth and carry wealth from generation to generation is you got to create ideas, and ideas be owned and invested in, and it creates an increase in all of that stuff, and you get the gains on the back end. When you start to make money, then money can make money. But our people currently don't have the legacy of past generations passing money to money. So the pathway to actually create this is to actually transfer know-how. And we have the great opportunity of basically some of these ideas that are currently in government labs and so forth. And we are systemically transferring them into startups. And we are building the pipeline that are going to be positioned inside of these opportunity zones. And so if we are investing into the companies that are going in these zones, you're starting to create a multiple effect, because these companies now are able to actually get into the real estate. And they are also getting into building the other companies around them that support those companies. And as we start to scale these companies, we're having the multiple effect of creating sustainable wealth, because now our money is moving the circular economy. It's moving 7-8 times through the same said community, and so increasing the wealth of the community. So sustainably, even after these programs has gone away, we basically have corporations that are positioned where we are, with our people owning and our people sustaining. So
now
it's
back to that Denzel Washington explanation here. So what I think I heard you say is that the Revolution Wealth Opportunity Zone Fund has the ability to take the capital gains investment and then turn those into equity investments that you make in enterprises that will domicile themselves in these opportunity zones, or let's call them what they are, right? Historically underutilized business districts are communities.
Right.
So we have now, through the ingenuity of Dr. Oliver Jones, an asset that allows us to self-determine with equity investments into businesses in our community. Is that an accurate way to say that?
Absolutely. Not only that, we are also investing into the incubators and the accelerators to sustain those the pipeline of these businesses and ensure that they basically are being posited into the communities and can grow from those communities. So we're not just sending the businesses to the communities. We build a program that essentially go alongside those businesses as they grow and scale. So we're de-risking the process as not, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to have my money, after 10 years, so why would I invest now? No, we are putting the structures in place that essentially growing these businesses to de-risk the process. So sustainability, long-term, that's what we're about. and growth and accelerated growth. That's what we're about. And generational wealth is what we're about.
Now, you talked about de-risking the process, and that brought me back to the mindset of, what the investment pool looks like. And we talked about individuals that have a capital gains benefit to be derived from a opportunity zone investment. But is there a pathway for an individual that may have some excess wealth that they would like to produce a social good with? Is there a pathway for them to participate in a fund like the one you set up?
Absolutely, it's the same process, right? It doesn't have to be the tax benefit of it. Just from what we're doing with the investments, we talk about that investing into these companies, which are positioned into those. Some of that funds can be used to help to build some of those accelerators, which essentially that now is that a real estate play, because we will have the pipeline that are coming into these accelerators. For some people know them as hub zones kind of thing in the past, right? But incubators next to accelerators for commercializing. So our process is like you go through a process of ideation, and then validated research as the next step that goes with this. And then you get into incubation, acceleration, commercialization, capitalization, right? And inside of that, we now are structuring your positioning throughout the opportunity zones, the infrastructure to accommodate the companies that are basically getting to that process of growth. So it's de-risking the process, meaning that the percentage that you've heard in the past of which how many businesses fail and so forth, a lot of it is the list of why businesses fail. We are working with those entities all the way through the pipeline and ensuring that they are being positioned there. So we have that components. That's why we're saying we're targeting 120,000, because we have it systemically in a way now. I do it, I live it. I've been living it for the last 7 years at Hampton University, and I have the proof to show it. All right, and folks can actually see some of the products. Thanks to the recognition that we get nationally for building these corporations, building the whole structure out. I myself, in terms of legitimacy in building it, I'm currently also one of 3 professors that are actually doing it now with NASA rocket scientists to move technology from the lab to commercialization. So the process.
And I want to get to that innovative work that you're doing on that NASA commercialization things. And folks, you guys got to stick around for that, because it's like mind blowing. But I want to put a face on this investor side of the equation before I transition and talk about the business side of the equation, right? The people that are receiving investments. And so we've talked about those individuals that would be in possession of a material amount of capital gains. And if I were to hallucinate, what they would look like, in many instances, they may be a Silicon Valley early stage employee that got a lot of stock, and Facebook did its thing, or Twitter or whatever, and whatever the technology is, and they're sitting on a tremendous amount of capital gains. Those would be good target investors, if you will, for a capital gains fund. But would also the face of potential investors be individuals like our high net worth entertainers, our high net worth athletes? I mean, what other kind of individuals who should have a vested interest in supporting a Revolution Wealth Opportunity Fund? What kind of individuals are we talking about?
Right. So as far as stakeholders, I want to rest assured, first of all, like folks who are saying, well, I ain't got that kind of money. There is a role that we basically are designing for everyone on in the fund. But of course, we basically have to really target those high net worth individuals, folks who basically sold the appreciated asset that they have, like a big real estate asset that they had, or got passed down, so you have however you gain on that capital in which you have already. Capital essentially whatever you have, right? And you gain more from it, whether you've sold it off or something, then that is something variable that you have to look at, where otherwise you would have been paying taxes on it, right? So that's one area. Next year, Walter promised next year for us to look into that other, for folks who are sophisticated enough to understand, accelerate the depreciation. There's another play for folks who can convert their long-term corporate accelerated depreciation to one on that basic is a 5-year depreciation, which is another monster that is also variable in this fund. So that's a second area, right? But I want you to kind of let's have the conversation to say, okay, I have some monies that is not that kind of money, right? We might need to start to kind of entertain some of that, as far as because not all of our people have that kind of a capital gain that's coming.
But I want to call.
We're gonna have that conversation too.
I want to call out our friends that do have that kind of money. And
okay, right.
what I'm specifically speaking to is, I'm reading news articles about Puff Daddy spending a couple of $100 million on a painting for a living ethnic artist, and I understand the strategy. It probably has taken some other paintings or assets in his portfolio and expanded it. I mean, again, I'm an accountant and advisor. I understand how to advise my clients down that pathway. And I'm asking the question, could we motivate, individuals like a LeBron James, individuals like a Beyonce, right? To take a bit of that wealth that they're trying to find a place, albeit not capital gains restricted, and invest it in a socially conscious way, right? That helps further the mission that you have of making sure that these investment deserts, that are the communities that we came from, right, have an opportunity to take full advantage of this de-risked investment model that you've created.
Absolutely. I want to also kind of point out another defensive strategy too, is like, if you don't come and do this, somebody will. I need you to understand this, that the capital is coming the same direction. And what we basically are experiencing is, if we're not the ones that are actually making those decisions on the capital to do it, somebody else will. And so for folks who basically are high network like that, if you really want to basically play a role in, you're serious about playing a role in transforming, what I call the last 150 to our new 150-14, right? And say, this is the role that Tanja play. I can put on my neck on the line that there's no better investment that you can do. You're now investing in people, you're investing in communities, and it's a multiple effect that is generational. So any need I say more, right?
No, you don't need to say any more on that side of the equation. I think that they're starting to smell what you're cooking, Dr. Jones. I want to jump over to the hard problem, right? The hard problem is the businesses in these communities, right, that have a anemic infrastructure, if at all, right? And if you look at the attrition rate historically of startups in America, it doesn't show a really good, track record and report card. So the question that I'm asking is, what kind of novel things are you looking at with the Revolution Wealth Fund that also de-risks that enterprise, that de-risks that kind of an investment? And I'm gonna throw a shameless plug in there for the T2X program that you have with NASA, because I had a chance to sit through your cohort 1 graduation, and folks, we'll just tell you more about that, but let's let the good doctor answer that question. What kinds of enterprises are you contemplating for these communities that also fits that de-risked investment model?
That's right. Good question, right? All right. So what I want to assure anyone that is we're talking about here is, like, we're not just talking about just go throw some money into a company because it's black owned, right? This is This is the kind of a quality in which we're developing in this stuff it's the green investment we're talking about, right? We basically are looking at in investment readiness for the 21st century competitiveness. And so if there are anemic companies that are sitting in a neighborhood somewhere, you have an opportunity to come in the program, but rest assured, be ready for it to kind of get dissected into, right? And reimagine for what the target market should be, right? The cool thing that we also are doing with the T2X program essentially is that on my computer, I'm looking at it right now, is like I have thousands of NASA technologies where some of the brightest minds have basically created over the whole era when we must created it, that are shell technologies that have been given to us in portfolio. And over the years, I have some brilliant minds that have gone through and combed possibilities of what we can do with those technologies. We also have mapped with players like in Department of Energy and Department of Defense and some of these other areas, some of what we call the SBIR, the small business funds that are there to actually move those technology into a further readiness. So we have that element of it. But what we start with you, the individual who has those companies, and see how we basically understand long-term where we're going with this, purpose, passion, are the people around it, what's the profitability of these companies, right? And in cases where they're not viable, they're not viable. So we can't invest into what's not viable, right? But you get a chance to actually see companies come into your space with target markets that we already targeted. In some cases, the actual even contracting we already have identified. So we are basically matching technology readiness to market readiness to investment readiness. And the goal is, even if your company is not ready for that kind of stuff, what we just put for you and your kids into a neighborhood, introduce into, it will be ready in the next couple of years, because we are investing into these startups that are growing, that ultimately will be there to basically take on. And so therefore we target the young a lot, right? But we also are looking for those existing companies that are inside of those communities that are ripe, or companies that are not quite in those communities but are ready to move into those communities, essentially through our ownership model. So we have a precise scale. We are basically in the ground inside with these companies and with a model that actually works, and we basically are partnering with folks with models that we know that works too, and we're looking to make this open systemically as we go through not just this year, but as we go to the next couple of years.
And what I heard you say that I want to unpack a little bit for the audience, and in full disclosure, Dr. Jones and I are working together on a contracting solution that I'm lending to the program, which is a huge disruptor. But what that allows the good doctor and the fund to do is not take a blunt force instrument and bang it into the community. It actually allows him to take a scalpel, if you will, and do surgery within the community. And so he mentioned a little bit earlier about the NASA technology transfer program, and he talked about its connection to the small business SBIR, right? Small business research and innovation program. Well, what a lot of people don't know about that program is when you marry those two, right? You take that technology and you run it through an SBIR program, and that prototype gets approved, it becomes a mandatory purchase for the federal government. It becomes a required buy for the federal government. So you're seeding those communities with enterprises that already have an existing customer who happens to be the largest customer in these United States of America, the federal government, right? I can also tell you that the good doctor is leaning on some work that I did in developing contracting for the veteran and disabled veteran business community. And so they have a very strong focus on seeding these communities with disruptors that have the let's say, ability to make a demand call against a large portion of the federal government's contracting pool and take those contract actions and domicile them in these opportunity zones. So the kinds of companies that the doctor is looking to seed within these opportunity zones are guaranteed, right? And when I say they're guaranteed based on the contract life that has, in many instances, 50, maybe 60 years of performance. So I want to just add that into this equation, because when we start talking about risk mitigation, it's important for you to understand that there is a proven formula, proven strategy, and it's not some type of a fly-by-night opportunity. I want to shift right now. We talked about the investors, right? You guys can be opportunity zone capable if you've got capital gains, or you can be opportunity zone viable as an investor if you've got a fat wallet, LeBron. If you've got a fat wallet, Beyonce, right? You all can make investments in these assets, right, and earn some significant return while doing good for our communities. And on the business side of the equation, right, this is for those of you who are residents of opportunity zones. If you connect with the good doctor, he's going to put you on track to connect with some of this bleeding edge technology. And if it isn't AI, I mean, I sat through some innovative solutions. There's this one technology where they're talking about recharging your cell phone wirelessly. What? This is technology that's coming out of this program that this genius over here has delivered to us. So there is a business side of this. There is an investor side of this that we've discussed. What I want to talk to you about now, a little bit about timing, and I'm asking the question of timing because in all of these incentive programs, they have gates that incentivize investors if they take action within a timely manner. Are there any timing considerations that I, as an investor, would want to take advantage of if I've got some capital gains that I want to invest this year?
Yes. The answer is yes. And I'm going to explain. We explain first. The biggest part of our strategy is, hey, leave it in for 10 years, and you basically get your tax off, right? But then there's other shorter term parts that are embedded in the program. One, if you had started in 2019, that has a 15% basis where you get 15% off the tax burden, right? If you basically did then and hold it in for a shorter term into the program. Then you have, so if you didn't, then there is this next tier is like you have a 10% tax burden, right? That tier is coming out or is ending on December 31st. So if you basically want to go anything short of I want to basically go longer than the 10 years in the program, but I want to basically take advantage of a tax incentive that is sitting here with a 10% off your burden today, then that deadline is coming up in December 31st, right? Other people are concerned also, Walter, that they might see in the near future capital gains percentage increase, and so that is something that is floated and there's some concerns about it. So again, addressing and moving within the December 31st timeframe, then you wouldn't be as worried about where you have your capital gains today. Even if you basically are saying, you know what, I am not going to take it today. I'm not going to, meaning that let's use the same reference of the 50,000 make to 450. I'm going to keep it where it is today in the markets. So if I don't take it, then I don't have to pay the capital gains because I'm not taking it yet. Now, if in the future, near future, those rates are going to go up anyway, and you have left it there, then you basically hit a bigger increase because you haven't taken it right now too. So there's an incentive to move your capital gains now, into these investments. One is because the future of it and the growth of the future of it is in a tax-free space instead of holding it where it is right now. So it makes all the sense in the world to move it by December 31st anyway.
So I think I understand you, but again, I'm going to put my Denzel Washington hat on and see if I can explain it like I'm a
There you go.
2-year-old. So what I think I heard you say is that there is a incentive gate that occurs on December 31st of 2021 that would allow one who has a capital gains to invest in the program and take advantage of a 10% reduction in their obligation, right? And that 10% could be huge depending on the amount of money that's invested. But I think I heard you say something else, which is probably more important than that step up in basis. And that is those that are speculating that the capital gains tax in the future is going to be higher than the current rate. So if you have a asset, right, that has spewed off a tremendous amount of capital gains, if you move that into a OZIM fund today, that will defer any tax on that investment or that corpus, what we call it in the accounting arena, and put you in a position not to be impacted by a future increase in taxes.
Never have to worry about any future increase in taxes because it wouldn't have affected you if you just move it over and have it into this portfolio.
So you have a social good that you're doing if you take full advantage of this December 31st window, right? You have a fiscal good that you're doing for yourself if you take advantage of it. I mean, it sounds like it's a win-win situation.
Have a generational good that you also are doing too, because of where you move it. Because then now you can now also, kind of, pass that on to, now you're talking about supporting generational wealth. So if we're serious about what we're talking about and making that kind of move, this is how you do it. All right.
So if I've got one of those assets, I've got some real money that may not be connected to capital gains, but I want to support the social good, or I have some burning capital gains in my pocket that I need to get invested by the end of this year. How do they get in touch with Dr. Oliver Jones no. Before we start talking about how they get in touch with Dr. Oliver Jones, I understand that all of these capital gain not capital gains, but all of these opportunity zone funds were not created equal. And if I am an investor and I'm looking to invest my money, I don't know if I would be looking at the Pookie and Day Day Opportunity Zone Fund. So can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of your fund, how that fund is managed, and how I can have confidence in the integrity of the wealth, the Revolution Wealth Opportunity Zone Fund?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I deliberately, when I was designing this fund, I wanted to actually have it be, I designed it for, not a Oliver Jones, pocketed wealth situation. I could go make money. I know how to go make money. Right. But I saw where there's a need to put like a structural manner that is going to be sustained over time. And so what we basically have done is because we have, it's tied to the 102 HBCUs, and also to, and we have another 18 tribal institutions that are to be partnered into the fund, right? We basically have that accountability component that is built onto it, where we're structuring the monies that are coming in to also kind of support back the HBCUs with the 1.8 billion. So we have that oversight that is there for accountability purposes for that. We also are getting some very mature folks who are in the investment community that has the interest of the this community at heart, and are very selectively identifying who will serve on that oversight board for the fund. We also are now bringing in some of the the best of what we got coming through the HBCUs and even African American that are inside of these other institutions, some of the brightest minds to help to continue this process, right? Because Walter, we're expecting that, you know, myself, you at some point won't be around to actually see this systemically work. And so we're putting in the structural framework in place for accountability, for integrity, and for sustainability. And so, so that is absolutely important to the whole method that in which we're doing. And so without, I can assure you that this is about sustainability. This is about creating wealth, not for Oliver, but there's 120,000 that each of those that are supposed to drive through and create sustainably the wealth. So put the framework in place in order to do it, is which I'm about in this fund.
Excellent, excellent. And in business, one of the things that is an Achilles heel that causes many organizations to fail is logistics. Logistics, right? Systems and procedures, right? That are functional. What kind of systems? What kind of logistics do you have in place to accommodate a rush of accounts? Like if you had 100 people come in tomorrow and say, Doc, you know, I've got 10 million, I've got 5 million, I need to invest it in your fund. What kind of systems, compliance, and procedures do you have to accommodate that?
Good question. We have some major institutions that are housed in the operational part of the fund, right? And I can mention one of our lead ones is Merrill and Bank of America. And so what we're able to do is to go to the institution and say, look at us, we are $1 billion fund, treat us like we're $1 billion client. And so so therefore we got in that category of management, anticipating that we will be operating major assets that's coming through there as that under the hood. That what that does, that allow us to scale to any community, any structure, anything, anytime, and with a validated fund management group that is supporting the structure already in place. Again, another layer of integrity that is basically placed into the fund. So it's not just a Revolution Wealth, Oliver's idea now, but the institution and the integrity and the sub funds and all that stuff that is being managed under it, but inside of the Opportunity Zone Fund. So we have some of these institutions that are there. There are several other major ones too. We'll mention as we go. But we started with hey, get our capacity up so that we can be treated as any of these major funds that are out there today.
Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, I can talk to Dr. Jones all day about this revolution that he is actually ushering in, that I believe is going to ultimately alter the balance of economic power across the country. I'm asking you as a viewer, as a longtime listener to this program, to contemplate picking up the phone and calling Dr. Oliver and tickling the ivories of the Revolution Wealth Opportunity Zone Fund. I'm going to bring the doctor back in a later program to talk a lot about, or a little bit more about, what he's doing on this technology commercialization side of the equation, because I mean, it takes a lot, well, to blow this mind, because you can see I don't have any hair because it's already been blown. But I sat through a graduation of a group of cohorts that are just doing revolutionary things that you need to know about. We'll talk to you about that during our next broadcast. Dr. Oliver, Dr. Jones, thank you for your time and attention.
Indeed. Thank you.